Okay, so we're going to pivot now to the implementation question. That's what a lot of people are really focused on, especially for folks that are building SBOMs, which is, hey, we've got the basics, but sometimes we need clarification on certain parts and how do we promote the tooling ecosystem. Kate has done a great job of shepherding this first at NTIA as the co-chair with JC Hertz, and now here at CISA as co-chair with Melissa Rhodes. So Kate Stewart from the Linux Foundation, thank you. Tell us about how you're thinking about it. You've got the timer for the whole time slice, including Q&A in the back.
Well, we thought we'd have Melissa start us off. And so Melissa, just tell me to advance the slides, and hopefully we can all hear you.
Can you all hear me?
We can. You are a voice in the room. We're good.
Oh, goodness. That's maybe a little bit too much power. All right.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so this is us. We are fearful leaders of the tooling implementation group. We like to try and keep it to be a group discussion because it's important that we get all the voices heard. But I'm Melissa Rhodes. I work at Medtronic. I'm actually the SBOM program manager and trying to figure out how to come with a global approach to SBOMs in a way that will help us not only make them well, but also use them well. Kate, did you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. I'm Kate Stewart. I work at the Linux Foundation. I've been involved in figuring out how we can make embedded systems be dependable, and part of that's going to be transparency. I've been involved also with the SPDX project for a long time now, and so we're trying to figure out how we can bring all these efforts together.
Awesome. Next slide. So we wanted to give you a quick outline. We knew that the intent, I think, is to go from SBOM to Arama to SBOM-Arama as we're giving updates here. I was actually not even an active member at the last SBOM-Arama, so I had to ask Kate to help me understand, okay, where were we then? But as the CISA groups have working groups have come together and been able to kind of figure out what our scope is, which was part of that time between the last SBOM-Arama and this one, we're really trying to understand tooling and implementation, understanding of those pain points. As I've understood it, we've also ended up taking on that SBOM types discussion from the Open SSF group, and so we've taken that on. That's ended up leading to a publication, which is our next, which was our first publication that we put out of this group. One of the other things that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. One of the things we've also tried to do is really try to understand from the group. Like I said, it's been a group discussion. What we feel like are the biggest pain points of being, tooling and implementation today. And we will share about those survey results in a minute as well. One of the things that came up in that survey of our group was trying to understand, and we started calling it SBOM quality, but we have since shifted our wording a little bit. But the idea being SBOMs have established fields, minimum fields that need to be filled out. And what would make those fields, how could we fill them out in a way that would, as you can see in this bullets here, adhere to a certain format? What is filled into those fields in a way that's going to be helpful and useful and shareable? And then the idea is, what fields are our biggest issues? And then how do we build out a pragmatic practice for the community to be able to do that well? And so what we're doing now is we're working on those pragmatic practices, and then we're also trying to figure out how to schedule in some plug fests and understand how we can learn more in that way. So from a timeline perspective, we were reforming and brainstorming in order from from the time CISA started this working group, discussing those pain points, collaborating with OpenSSF to make sure that we've got a really good understanding of how different tooling and different methods for creating SBOMs might lead to not different SBOMs, but SBOMs that have different types of content. And then that is what has led us to this idea of SBOM type. Like I said a minute ago, we'll be talking, that's the next bullet, working on the SBOM types. So we've done a lot of work on definitions, understanding what data can be provided from different SBOM creation methods and tooling, as well as pros and cons to help us understand how you might see this different types of SBOM content, and then be able to maybe even bring those different pieces of content together to create a more robust final SBOM. We did surveying for understanding the pain points and the topics that we need to, in the order of the topics that we decide to cover them in. And now we're actively working on this pragmatic practices work for filling in SBOM fields. This is just a kind of a word map of like what I did. Kate actually thought of it, took the notes from what we've been doing, all of the working notes, and stripped out all of the names and stuff. But I mean, you can see from the notes, like what our big topic were, discussion, pain, buzzwords are. We were really focused on how do we help the industry in terms of tooling and implementing the practices that have been either told to us or be able to take those practices to another level, which will help us become a practice that can be automated, because without a good practice, without a good method, without a good understanding, you really have a hard time automating or creating tooling around anything.
76 pages of notes that this is summarizing from.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about this a lot. And so thank you very much to Jeremiah and Justin for helping us to track all that.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
Next slide. And then I think that Kate's going to take away and talk about the SBOM types. I just wanted to preface this with this publication was our first publication. It was something that we felt was really important to get understood right away, because we do, in our initial conversations about SBOMs, it was obvious that in our meetings, in our group meetings, we were actually talking past each other of what an SBOM is and how they could be used and what the content was supposed to be. And so having this publication was super important to us. However, we also know it was built on the back of weeks and months of discussions that, the common community may not be as privy to. So we would like to take this moment to really kind of discuss some of the background and are working with the on-ramps and adoption committee to help make that something that can be better understood in the wider community as well. Kate, go ahead.
So part of the challenge is everyone looks at the elephant slightly differently. Here, we're all blind. We're all looking at the elephant, trying to figure out what's really going on in the software. And depending on where you're intersecting the elephant, or in this case, the software lifecycle, you're going to see things slightly differently. And you're going to have different information available to you at that point in time. And you can generate SBOMs everywhere, okay? All around the outside here. Let's see if this will work. Yeah, all around the outside here are artifacts that might have a good role in an SBOM to really convey information in a useful fashion. However, you won't have them all sitting in one SBOM. For the most part, when people are using the term SBOM, they're referring to what's coming out of a build. However, because of some of the security things, however, depending on how you've installed something, you may be exposed to a vulnerability or not. Depending on, whether a file has been actually made it into your build and the version of a component, you may be exposed to something or not. So there's a lot of information that goes into building software. And one of the sort of realizations we've had as a group is, the most authoritative point in time is sort of when things are happening in the right at your fingertips as opposed to discovering things afterwards. And so understanding that, someone who's doing a source scan for their legal team is going to be seeing a different result than someone looking at a build SBOM after a build is completed and looking at the components there. They're different things. And people are using the term SBOM and they were getting confused. And I started seeing this a couple of years ago by people talking past each other and wasting time, and we saw it in the group when we were starting. So part of the focus was, let's see if we can get a language so we can all talk the same thing. So in that report that you'll see, there are definitions for each type of SBOM. A design SBOM is something you might be wanting to use when you're doing your planning your product, saying these are the components I'm planning to bring in. It may be more ad hoc, it may be less authoritative, but it's a useful artifact, especially if you're doing requirements and traceability type of things. A source SBOM is the sources you're bringing in or into your own environment, and it may have dependencies too. And then the build is coming out of your build infrastructure. And it could be your build, your test, your deploy. And then we go into deploy. Oh, you've gotten the build from someone. You want to point to their build SBOM, but you're putting it on your system. How did you configure it and deploy it on your system? That is different information. You want to record that in your own organization and keep that information available. And then, hey, I've got this system that's been running for 10 years. Is what I think I've deployed actually matching what's on there and what's happened with all my runtime dependencies? Again, there could be vulnerabilities here. We might want to track this. And then the other type of SBOM is, hey, I've got this binary sitting there. I don't know what's in it. I need to analyze it. I need to use tools, crack it apart, figure it out. And there's useful information there. Or quite frankly, someone's giving me a build SBOM. Here's my binary. I want to cross-check, make sure that they're actually matching. These are all going to have different sets of information available to them and give slightly different viewpoints. But they're all valid, and they're all useful. So you could probably do this with the infinity loop as well. We just did it with the software lifecycle. There tends to be affiliations slightly. This is not authoritative, though. You can do it from different perspectives as well. But you might want to be keeping source SBOMs in your procurement stage, your develop stage, when things are coming into an organization or your developers are creating things. Okay, build is coming forward. Obviously, that's the obvious one. When you've deployed it, you may want to record a deployed SBOM. Hey, when you're maintaining something or thinking about retiring things, you might want to look and check what's actually there. And then anytime you might want to create an analyzed one. So the next thing, what we did after we put that publication out, and I would encourage people to check it out, and if things are not clear, reach out to us. Is we did a survey of the rest of the participants who are coming into the meetings regularly, and SBOM quality showed up as one of the top issues. And you can see from that earlier word map, it was actually an issue pretty much all the way along. And so this is what we've been focusing on. And the question became, well, what is SBOM quality? Well, there's aspects of structural correctness. Is the content accurate and useful? And there's different ways of understanding what a field means. And that's what we were trying to hone in on, is people were seeing the same word, and to the elephant example, they were interpreting it differently. So how can you share an SBOM in a community when people are interpreting those fields slightly differently? And, is there a context around this data? And, what are the processes and timelines of working with it? These are all factors that play into the quality of what we're looking at for SBOMs. This is all work in progress. What we started with, though, is looking at the minimum fields, because everyone's trying to line up to them right now, and look at the descriptions of them, and then make sure that we all had common understanding. And so when we did this exercise over a couple of months, the ones that are marked in red here are the ones that people were had different perspectives on pretty significantly. The ones in yellow, there's a little bit more sort of agreement. And then the green, everyone seemed to have a rough idea. Now, there's still the component naming problem, but people understood what a component was, or at least from their understanding. So we're started tackling things from the red, we'll go to the yellow, we'll go to the green, and just make sure we've got pragmatic advice. And so what we're working on right now is for each of these fields, how do you fill it in? And try to just come up with pragmatic advice as to, was the component modified while it was in your possession? Okay, yes, your organization is a supplier. No, okay, well, get where you got it from, or if it was open source, at least put the project name in. There was a tremendous amount of variation out there in just filling this one field in. And so what we're trying to do is put some guidance in place for each of these fields. So we say, hey, if you're looking for how to figure this out, try it this way. And this is what we're trying to do. So Melissa sort of coined the pragmatic phrase, and we're just trying to be pragmatic here. Okay, and one of the things came up about, well, what does it mean to be modified? Well, so we talked about that, and it's sort of like, are one or a few of the things true? Like, has it been, source code been altered? Yeah, that's an obvious one. The hash is different. Maybe yes, then it's been rebuilt by someone else. Supply code compiled into another component. Tool settings have been changed, different compile options, different deploy options, and the configs and options invoked. All of these are factors that may make something be modified depending on the context in which it goes into. And so these are the things that we need to start coming together as a community to figure out, and so that the SBOMs, when we exchange them, will actually have useful data. So Melissa, you want to finish this off?
Sure. So as we're going forward, our expectation is that we're going to finish that pragmatic practices document, and that would help us, or help not only us, because I'm looking for this information too, but it will not only help us, but it will also help the wider community for filling in those fields, those minimum fields, as well as publishing their SBOMs for wider use, and even moving SBOMs between consuming tools. Literally helping with implementation of the SBOMs. So then if we're going to re-review our pain point survey or maybe take a resurvey of our group, so that we understand if our highest pain point is still our highest pain point, and then start working on the next priority. So that's kind of how we're planning to work the group for now. And then we also have a objective out there to start getting a plug fest planned. Now I'm going to open it up for questions.
We've got a few minutes left for questions if someone's got curiosity about what's going on. Go for it.
Well, first of all, Kate and Melissa, thank you for your efforts on this. I'm John Gallagher from Viaku. Okay. Within your team, how much is cyber physical systems or IoT OT systems part of the? I didn't see it in the word cloud, so I thought I'd just ask if
it's something I care near and dear to from my embedded side. So working with IoT devices is part of my day job. So I'm sort of keeping an eye on that perspective, but more people participating from that side, and how we hook up, vulnerabilities happen between software and the hardware all the time. Mm-hmm. And how we sort of encapsulate and summarize that dynamic and take it beyond software into bringing a hardware in an effective fashion is something I welcome discussions on.
So we can join the group.
Oh, please.
And by the way, I love your title.
Let's get our pragmatic ones finished. But you're welcome to join, start listening, and then start to propose in the next set of rounds of topics.
I love the word dependable in your title, by the way.
Thank you. Oh, and I'll just say that Melissa works for Medtronic, so she cares about devices too.
Absolutely.
Ethan Ron, Arista Networks. One thing I wanted to ask about is when you mentioned source and build SBOMs, those seem somewhat similar to Salsa's concept of provenance documents. Is there any sort of a mapping or relationship between those two?
We haven't made it articulate, but yeah, there's an implicit understanding. I work with David Wheeler, and I work with a variety of the people in the OpenSSF. So there's some common mental mind models in here that we probably should make more explicit if that's going to be useful to people.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. Okay, then.
Are there any questions from our friends online? Yeah. All right. Well,
thank you much, then.
Thank you so much, Kate. Excuse me, and Melissa, of course. Really appreciate that. That's where, right, a lot of the details, especially for the folks who are forward-looking, are really active, the folks that are already implementing things.